Greetings and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of Golarion, the setting for Pathfinder role-playing game system? If you are, you can join me, your host and guide here, Tank and Adventure Group, and I lead you through the portal to TNZ once again to visit Valash Raj. We're going to be learning all about it today, diving into it, etc., etc. So if you are ready, please leave me a tip before we go. Like, subscribe, and bell, and let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. I've opened up the gateway to Golarion. TNZ and Valash Raj await. Grab my hand. Away we go once more. Valash Raj. Now, I'm using particularly as a source here the TNZ World Guide. There might be a couple other books here, but pretty much most of the good information is from here. And I would recommend, if you want to dive into it a little bit more, review what I've kind of got, all those kind of things, you can check it out here. Let's talk about Valash Raj. It's got a capital of Dracovin. It's a feudal monarchy ruled by Valash Raja Kasavar. There's catfolk, giants, lizard folk, Oni, Tripkeys, Venarans, lots of languages, lots of material that come out of the jungle there, because it's on technology, talk about that, produce, spices, lore, lumbers, textiles, gems, dyes, coffee, ore, many different religions there, including kaiju worship. A very interesting nation that is actually built into the Valashmai Jungle in the eastern section of it. So it is both part of the jungle and not part of the jungle, is what I'm going to say. Tune in next week when I'm going to do a video on the actual jungle itself. But it is a country that is both in it and not. I think that's a great way of saying it. A great way of describing it. So, what is the history of this land? The history of this land is dictated by, in many ways, this. A kaiju. It is also dictated by the Valashmai Jungle. A hostile environment that is ruled by kaiju, but there's also powerful ornate dragons, ancient civilizations, fungal monsters, extraplanar horrors. That is the Valashmai Jungle, and where Valash Raj is built out of. If an outsider looks at it, they would assume that nothing could flourish here, that divine intervention would be necessary for any kind of nation to be founded here. Locals, though, these threats are no more existential than earthquakes, monsoons, or wildfires. It's dangerous, yes. It's brutal, yes. It's feral, often. It can be planned for, lived around, and governed. Basically, the Valash Raj is often called Valash or the Raj. And it is the largest and most successful state to have thrived in these hellish environments. And it was founded about 200 years ago in the thick jungles of Kawak's Run. Kawak being over here. When the Rani of Dracovin declared herself heir to the ancient Valashi Empire, talk about it a little bit, not mostly today, and began to conquer her way across the Valashmai Jungle. I guess we'll talk about that now, actually, because there's not. Valashi Empire was an ancient empire from outside of Golarion that conquered this region partially. It's a successor state to that, kind of. But that's very ancient days. We won't get into too many details today. We'll talk a little bit about today, but just, that's a good input. Her conquest and those of her heirs expanded the Raj north to the Great Gulf and south to the Seducing Peaks, creating a true empire in eastern Valashmai Jungle. The dynasty is of lizard folk, Uruksi, through its nobility and populace that includes Tripkey, catfolk, Maroons. Valash is ethnically integrated. Catfolk are more common in the north, Tripkeys in the south, but it's an ancient demographics rather than official policy. So, yes, there are regions that are specifically divided to each of these individual ancestries, but it's just, that's where they've always lived, kind of thing, rather than politically divided. The nation is relatively decentralized, existing in small, concentrated provinces built around a city or fort, with villages sprawling out in all directions. Severed from the rest of the Raj in many miles of hostile jungle. The provinces have strong regional identity. Villages and towns have long-standing local traditions and histories that identify them over centuries. And a lot of times these places identify more with themselves in their own region, Raj. They're much more local. Outsiders can basically dismiss Valash Raj's claim to the Valashmai throne as hubris. It's not completely unfounded. The Valashi wards allowed jungle natives to pass as they were Valashi themselves, and arcanists and adventurers have begun to recreate ancient sorceries from them. And though through the Valash is a long way from the glories and sins of this ancient empire, it does want to reach the great heights of it. Perhaps the greatness of it, less the sins. Here's its location. This is where it stretches as part of the Valashmai Jungle. So it's this eastern landmass, west of Minata, south of Zahoy. You saw some peaks run across these southern reaches of the kingdom, shielding it from the worst seasonal typhoons. Ancient elemental horrors, carbonous plants, verdant predators inhabit peaks, making them pretty uninhabitable. Vast stretches of the hostile jungle dominate the southern lowlands around the peaks, periodically broken by hills and coves. These coves serve as population centers. Basically, the little areas outside of the jungle are really great to populate. North of the peaks, the hills stretch for leagues before going into Kalvek's Run, the stretch of dinosaur-infested swamplands, wetlands, and mangrove forests that stretch from the northern coast through the tropical pristine jungle covering the borders with the rest of Valashmai. So yeah, Cove basically separates this region out from the rest of the jungle. It's dinosaur infected. Flanking the run are great swaths of inhabitable territory. Ratcrit, the capital, lies on the highlands west of the run, while the area to the east is densely populated. Often the Raj's northern coast is the Great Gulf, marred by choking clouds of gray ash that commonly darken the skies. In the Gulf center is a squat flat island known as Arung that belches great ash from an ancient Valashi ruins all hours of the day. We'll talk about that one too. Despite its size, this kingdom is basically an island kingdom, rather than continuous inhabited lands. Basically, each of these territories is like a small island into themselves deep within the jungle that's settled. And they do have regular kind of connections with each other, and relative safety in these areas. But yeah, little islands. Kaiju migration routes, ancient ruins bursting with horrors, and populations of aggressive dinosaurs in the jungle's inverted territories make a lot of these areas really unfit for settlement. So this is also the Raj's most potent defense against outside powers. It's a jungle. If you want to invade, you gotta fight the jungle before you even get to the cities. Yeah. Let's talk about some of those cities and locations here. Of course, we can talk about the capital, Rakkarit. It's basically was built around the whims and capricious natures of kaiju. Stands alone. It's built within the construction techniques reverse engineered by Valashmai ruins. So they reverse engineered some Valashmai ruins, built this place. The constant kaiju callers' rituals and ruinously expensive enchantments repel monsters and weather alike. Stupas and minarets tower over the surrounding jungle, and the entire palace appears carved from a single and possibly massive piece of stone, detailed with grand murals and magical lighting. The entire city is built upon one of the great vessels that brought the Valashmai Empire to Golarion. Remember, I said they came from outside of Golarion. I didn't say they came dimensionally outside of Golarion. They came from space. And some of the ancient festivals is right smack down there. In its sprawling residential vistas, you can see ancient Valashmai estates, rebuilt from rubble, converted into the tenants for laborers. Ancient infrastructure has been repurposed into modern conveniences. And most of the city has central heating from the Starship Thruster Assembly. The army trains in underground pavilions that once stored thousands of sleeping passengers, and kaiju callers read new lore into enchanted discs that can repeat every secret once whispered to them. Basically, storage devices that are magical. It's also the intellectual center of the empire. Every secret gleaned, every artifact torn from the land's many ruins, returns to the city for analysis and study. While recreating every secret of the fallen empire is a dream, very far off, Rakkarit's colleges turn out a steam of arcanists, inventors, novel insights with value cannot be underestimated. It's an ancient spacefaring empire that conquered this region and settled here. Many become adventurers delving into ruins within the Raj or beyond to seek out new enigmas, while others remain content as advisors, court wizards, or armors for various nobles. Other cities in the region happen to be places like Shuya, Nagari Gem, and of course, outside of this, we're going to talk about Star Titans Cave in a minute, Axmar Raj, which was incorporated into the Kingdom 2, ruled over by the Axmar Raj, named after the region, who helps look after the Star Titans Grave. The corpse of Agmazar. We can talk about some of these locations. Emerald Mile, where there is a massive structure and artifact of the Elemental Empire, which was even ancient when we get to the Valashmai, and has magical crystals related to it. The Great Gulf, that separates Raj from Zahoy, where the island which is belching smoke, well, it's a good thing. The Great Gulf was basically had toxic waters, few fish, still winds, boats broke down in it. It was a pretty terrible place to try to travel across, and druids and naturals tried to do something about it. Mogaru showed up. The king of kaiju showed up about 150 years ago, went to the Arun Island, ripped open the hills, spat flame into it for 3 days and 3 nights, burned there, which is still burning to this day, and then peaced out. This helped the Gulf recover. Purification is yielding more results. Water's less hostile, less unnatural, less poisonous. It still is covered with smoke and burning, but there's also monster populations resulting from this. Things like mosasaurs, ichthyosaurs on the deep waters, spinosaurs on the shores, and even Kawak kind of snaps up ships in the water there too from his domain in the run. So it's still difficult, and our run's now settled over near the burning giant, slag ruins that, people now explore and check out and discover things that may be related to the giant kaiju breathing horrible fire breath into it for 3 days. And nights. Yeah. Kawak's Run, though. That's the domain of Kawak. That giant, massive area there, where he also kind of spawns out his little spawns from his body, which look like juvenile Spinosauruses that hate boats and stuff. And people learn to use smaller vessels to avoid that. But Kawak is kind of believed to be a natural kind of part of the jungle hegemony here and stuff like that. That kind of came into this region. It's a massive swampland, great mangroves, with waters that can go up to 50, 60 feet deep. A lot of fruits and verdant things here, river dolphins, porpoises, all kinds of fish. The ruins of the Jade Hegemony, whose geoforming was thought to result in Kawak coming about, are in this region. And there are towns and other things scattered without it. So it's an interesting region that is part of their territory. And of course, then you've got the Star Titan's Grave, before we finish up this section, to talk about, where Agnar fell from the sky, Mogaru showed up, killed his ass. He came back as an undead titan. Go see my kaiju video, which I've already had out. And yeah, his Hulk is there. Basically, the Star Titan's Grave has a lot of fortresses and towns around it that kind of watch him, try to keep him contained and kind of things like that, and keep his undeadiness and the corruption from him sealed away. With Sayu Agnar, the current Agmar Raj from Agmar Raj, looking after things and basically making sure things remain safe, generally speaking. Let's talk about who's in charge of this place. Well, of course, the Valash Raj is in charge, King Rockerit. But really, when we talk about this thing, we have to kind of break down the main people in charge. And there's the Valash Raj. We'll talk about this fellow over here in a minute. Local kings, Rajas, and sultans basically rule all the various kingdoms and pledge loyalty and tax to the Raj. In return, the Valash Raj basically protects them from kaiju and lesser threats. Every other function basically is secondary here. So it's a lot of more independent nations under the big one. But the key to this protection is, of course, the royal kaiju callers. These are among the most skilled kaiju callers in Golarion, possessing centuries of accumulated lore on all the various kaijus, honed songs, rituals, and procedures that are basically meant to appease them. Sightings of kaiju can cause dozens of these callers to be dispatched across the Raj, tasked with recruiting and requisitioning anything they need to manage the kaiju. They are more important in the Raj than even the army. They protect the provinces and the cities. Basically, if you have a Raja with no talent, for war or troubled kingdoms or anything like that, that can pass. New generation, new person can be in charge. If you mess up with kaiju callers and mismanage them, it could be the entire kingdom falling apart. So that's how important they are. One individual ruler can mess up a local area, but generations can pass. Kaiju callers messing up things can destroy the kingdom. The army is split between the royal army and provincial troops, with especially Spanish. The Raja himself maintains an elite permanent force, while the provincial governors and local lords are expected to have their own troops, too. More common than warfare, the army monitors basically kaiju behavior, calls monsters and dinosaurs near inhabited areas, and hunts down rebels and bandits. They maintain things. They don't really go to war very much. Provincial wards that want to have less expenses might hire adventurers as monster hunters rather than send out their army. The thing here is, large empire, very individualist areas, there isn't a lot of loyalty to the set. It's loosely tied to the rules, basically. Taxes are ad hoc, tributary, based on promises made to the various kingdoms when they're integrated. And, they could always be like, oh, things were lost in transit, don't worry about it, so. And every ruling person has their various favors they have, their things that they can lay these threats, basically that. So, yeah, it's a mess. The Valash Raja can appoint advisors from these various kingdoms for governance. This could be, promises, help out things, peerage, put people that are very important, that have could have good uses and good abilities in various places of power. Put other people in positions where they get a salary but don't really do anything in government. Granted, both of them have this kind of similar voice, but really you're placing people in places and there's not a distinction between them. But it's just meant to keep things appeased in a lot of ways. Our current top of sandalwood throne, bearing a sky metal crown, his ancestors is Casa Vara. This lizard folk here, current Valash Raj, envoy to the kaiju, king of kings, inheritor of the Valashi, slayer of beasts, shield to his people. He has yellow-black scales, wide eyes, long immaculated maintained claws. Like his predecessors, his mother especially, conquered, made the Raj grow as quickly as possible. He's concerned with legitimacy and legacy. He's focused on centralizing, stabilizing the Lodge, forming relationships built through the early conquest, gaining some measures of international recognition. He's trying to make the kingdom more a kingdom. It does mean he's got a tighter hand in a lot of the provinces, which has been fought back in a lot of ways. He's provided funds and productions in a lot of ways, but he is kind of overbearing in a lot of these culturally independent places. So there definitely has been fight back. Granted, he's hired adventurers to go investigate problems that, maybe a certain region doesn't talk about, but they can look into things and come back. His opposite, one of the major ones, is the dowdy Raha Sultana, who I'll show a little bit later, a middle-aged female Tripki who is the current queen of Lahuyasa. She appears indolent and luxurious at first, but she's also an excellent queen. She's shrewd, generous, well-liked by her subjects. And she's kept Lahusha prosperous and safe under her rule. Basically, to her people's pride, but also to her independence in the knowledge, to a degree. She's merchants and commoners expect the same justice as nobility, and rural farmers consider them safe from monster attacks. Basically, when her country was conquered, she was a child and inherited the position of Sultana from her mother died 30 years ago. But when she inherited the city, things weren't looking good. They had a monopoly on Mintanen, but there was whittled wealth, mismanagement, problems with influence. She had to rebuild trade with Minata, basically had a lot of public works. She's basically recovering what was lost in between the time of her predecessors and the conquest. So she's basically rebuilding things back in the heyday of this city. She's a big enemy of Casa Vera here. She hates the centralization reforms. She basically resists every policy at the palm, and basically uses her wealth and cleverness to resist this. She isn't rebellious. She prefers peace. And being within the Valash Raja has been convenient enough to not risk war. But she wants to stretch everything as thin as possible and resist as much as possible to keep things basically to the people as much as possible in a lot of ways, and particularly her nation. So it is a lot about checks and balances in war. Here's a kaiju colony, one of the elite royal ones. In a normal day, you begin at sunrise. Hunters pour into towns and royal villages before dawns. Cooking fires bring light to the villages before the sun. Long-distance caravans and travelers arrive, though some won't arrive until mid-morning. In many parts of the country, especially in urban areas, there are morning prayers. Various religious minorities kind of have their little ceremonies. Shortly before sunrise, in smaller settlements, a local kaiju call, or larger ones, council of them, come together, having divinations, and basically check, are there any kaiju nearby? Then give the all clear to anybody, begin work. If there's a kaiju, they have special horns and drums and magical message that warn everybody for miles. They're basically, hey, kaiju around, look out for that. Labor goes till noon, though there are those that sleep through the hottest parts of the day, or retreat to safety in settlements when dinosaurs are the most active, close to noon. Basically, if you're foolish enough, or brave enough, that's when you risk being out closer to dinosaurs by sun. Merchants, traders, scholars, and nobles who have no basically disruption of the environment work during the day. This is basically a sign of status in the nation. If you can work during the middle of the day, it's a sign of status. Communal prayers herald the resuming of labor in the late afternoon, where there's blessings of the faithful, and the kaiju callers perform a second set of checks. Basically, earlier in the day, maybe they didn't notice kaiju. Someone could have showed up now, though. If dangers were started in the morning, but are then gone by afternoon, basically, laborers will have a partial day, reduced work day. In cities, mail, public announcements, and royal proclamations are basically distributed around the prayers that are right before the second part of the day begins. And it's a common point of religious practice in the nation. The nexus of civil and religious activity makes this kind of the big socialization ings. Manual laborers have a late communal lunch with family and friends, trading gossip of the day. Sedentary workers enjoy an early dinner at a restaurant, often with co-workers rather than family. Sunset marks the end of most workday and start of others. Most kaiju and dangerous dinosaurs are basically diurnal. They're active during the day, inactive at night. So this is actually the preferred time that a lot of people venture for the settlements. Those on short trips leave at sunset as it approaches, hoping to get to their destination before dawn. Longer trips leave after sunset proper and are escorted by hunters in the cover of night for their safety in the first vital hours of travel, as well as soldiers tasked with calling monster populations that work by night, aiming to return home days cached before. Various queries and cautionary measures against monster attacks and kaiju migrations are performed daily, and most settlements live pretty safe. Kaijus are rarely to visit, and dinosaur populations are either relatively tame or kept in check, if they are dangerous types of dinosaurs. So incidents are actually rarer than if you are an outsider visiting a small town in Valash Raj would see. During the year, and there's the queen herself from I talked about earlier, there are basically two seasons, monsoon season and dry season. Their New Year's happens at the end of the monsoon season, right before dry season. There's a big festival held in each city with huge public feast. This is, of course, run by the Raj. Basically, it's a sign of how good the nation is going, depending on the party it's years. So bad parties are basically signs of protest, discontent, and will have things to match. Basically, it's a joyous occasion, rush of marriages, proposals during this big thing of the new year. The first harvest is happening from fruit that was grown throughout the basically monsoon season, and foreign traders will arrive now at the beginning of dry season because weather's better. Inevitably, at least one kaiju changes its migratory patterns. So, basically, the kaiju callers will evacuate villages along this migration path, try to redirect it into a less disruptive one, update their files, and allow the refugees to return home after a few weeks. Sometimes, though, this rupture can be permanent, and entire villages have to be relocated, upending lives of hundreds of people. There can also be disastrous occasions where an entire town might have to move to an area because it's too dangerous for the kaiju callers and army to secure. 9 Freedoms is a holiday in the midst of the dry season. Basically, this is for the mythical rebellion against the Valashili, the space empire that came and basically conquered here, and the inheritance of throne and by the freed slaves. Valashini came, conquered this area, enslaved all the locals. They were eventually defeated, the empire fell, and basically this is a successor state. It celebrates this in a lot of ways. There's rituals, prayers, readings of ancient historical things. You know, there might be elaborate reenactments using illusionary magic of the Valashini and the theaters and public things. Casa Raj announces the opening of new ruins during this time period of the 9 freedoms, if there is one such one. And with new adventurers and stuff can rush to this new ruins and discover ancient things. But usually this is when the ruins, the old ones, are cleared out. Basically when the Raj is being like, this one's cleared out enough, it's this time to open up a new one this year. It's a big momentous occasion because, again, they were spacefaring people. They had great ancient technologies and magics. And rediscovering this wealth of knowledge and material is great. At the end of the dry season, dinosaurs begin to hatch. There's a big hatching season right before the monsoon season. So this can be dangerous as there's a lot of hatchlings about. So there's the most time that it's dinosaur season. It's basically the most unpopular season of the year. A lot of hunts are stepped up. Army basically calls a lot of more dangerous herbivores and predators. Food is harvested, stored to keep away from various herbivores that might want to eat it. So farm work is also protected. Dinosaurs are big and hard to keep away from your farms. So this is also the season, though, because the army's very active with the monster hunting and dinosaur calling, that they hunt down a lot of bandits and rebels. Hey, best time to do it. We get into the monsoon season. Great rainstorms happen here. This is the prime harvesting to go to the Emerald Mile and get a lot of material from that. But river boats become more populous during this season. They're a better method of travel because monsoons, tropical storms, hurricanes. Towns and villages can be flooded, badly damages. But basically, resources are sent out from the Empire to help rebuild. But this also causes a spike in monster attacks. Basically, because if walls and culls are basically not being kept at bay because of all the damage from a hurricane or typhoon, yeah, a lot of adventurers are very active during this time period. And the year comes to end with monsoon season coming to an end, with a few weeks of preparation, basically for the New Year's feast. And this is when a lot of the great trade caravans depart for the New Year in celebration. So, let's talk about the culture of this nation. Because it's interesting and strange. Basically, if you observe from outside, the Raj styles itself after Valashiri, which is bizarre. The Valashiri were slavers that conquered this region and enslaved them. And the ancestors of the Raj were enslaved. You could point that out. But it has been thousands of years since that time, since the Valashiri fell. And the successors that founded and ruled by the Raj's ancestors took on the name, legacy, and culture, even as they embedded the worst impulses. Some of these cities took decades, even centuries to fall, and fell by wars, destroyed knowledge bases, and even more hostile kaiju rather than simple asses of the former leaders. For many of these successor states, the culture survived for a long-forgotten homeworld that's functioning indistinguishable from the empire as a whole. So yes, they are kind of legacies. Yes, the enslavers are gone, but they are connected to that legacy, connected to that culture. So historians and the legacy of this empire is simple. Basically, it is one of simple monsters who left a ruined land in its wake. The people of this land, that's to the simple historians. To the people of this land, basically, they understand the highest peaks and their worst excesses. So there were great things as part of it. So they have a sense of inheritance. They like the great achievements, the great works, but they also understand the great sins of the Valashi. So it's a responsibility to the Valash Raj to understand the greatness, but also understand the sins. And to fix the Empire's mistakes, but restore the glory. And become worthy of the greatness of the Empire, not the sins of the Empire. There's a lot of oral traditions and cultural expressions that deeply tie into this. Oral storytelling is very important. Many legends have been forgotten from being written out, but they're in folk ballads or local legends. They might be things on the dangers of the world, might of the kaiju, strength of hunters of old. And a lot of the religions here, they come and mix in with this. Faiths from Nagajor, the old empire, lands further away, even kaiju worship mixed together in this way here to create something, where kaijus are seen as either gods or intermediaries to them. Witches that draw upon the power of local kaiju is actually common sight here. So the religious culture here is this kind of mixed bag that is created from this entire area. Rituals here revolve around safety. Safety from kaiju, safety from dinosaurs, monsters, and mundane threats as travel. If you are going on a long trip, you seek blessing and good omens before you depart. You don't depart if there's bad omens. And it's actually seen if travelers arrive safely at your community, it's a good omen. Travel's dangerous here. An every wealthy household invites guests to tell their stories and share news from abroad. Hunters will seek blessings before going out and hunt. And they're revised in cultures and seen often as the soldiers of this land. They keep the dangerous peeper in blaze. It's also prominent shared that many famous hunters will join the Raja's armies, basically as skilled hunters. Remember, the army hunts monsters as one of their major things they do. And a skilled hunter can bring back monster parts and bounties to get a lot of money for prey. It has wealth. There's magical gear and materials that can be made from a lot of the monsters and things that they hunt. And they can then get rare imported things and weapons or magical things. Things like now that's becoming a big thing, guns and other technology. Remember, there's a place that, though they don't have as much of it, understand a lot of technology. So places where guns coming out from Alkenstar are a big thing now. So gunslingers are becoming a big thing in this area because, hey, still rare, but that's a very good hunting tool for monsters. So there's a training here that, can be assigned of important hunters and rich nobles to gunslingers. We look at some more parts of their culture. Traditional clothing is based around sarongs, which can be paired with lightweight shirts or blouses. Informal clothing, especially religious ones, it's varied. They embody elements of actually ancient Valashi environmental suits and how they appeared into a lot of their major formal clothes and religious things. Textiles are an important part of their fashion, styles like bakra, ikrit, and tapas, rich in regions. For cuisine, spicy food, with an emphasis on fruits and dinosaur meats. Rice is a common staple, though in some parts of the country, sago and other plant pith is actually important. Hadrosaur or chicken satay is a common meat dish, almost everywhere. And various spiced peanut sauces are very popular, so popular that merchants export them throughout TNZ. But there you go. There's Valash Raj, a very interesting nation because they are built into a part of a massive jungle filled with kaiju, monsters, dinosaurs, and other beasts. But they found a way to live. They're also a conquered nation that this one area, under this powerful ability, the, Raj of it all, Valash Raj, conquered through generations this region. They're beginning to find stability. And it is still, in a lot of ways, independent little countries and areas here too. But this network of support and protection makes these little islands be able to live in amongst all these dangers. They settle where they can. And there's a lot of places here they can't. Kaiju, monsters, the ancient monster-infested ruins, the dinosaurs make it really hard to settle anything in this entire region. So they find a way to do it. That is Valash Raj. People that face incredible dangers at all times, but build a civilization out of it. They found a way, using a combination of knowledge gained over generations and ancient technology and magic from the people that conquered their region thousands of years ago. This combination of things makes them strong. Perhaps, eventually they may conquer the entire jungle. Maybe. Maybe not. But now they try to make themselves a nation. And there is resistance to it. Because plenty of these small places, yeah, they understand they're under this country. But they're like, we'll give you some money. You send some people to make sure we don't get any kaiju attacks. I'm fine with this deal. Just leave us alone. That's what they prefer. But it's an interesting place with a lot of interesting growth. And honestly speaking, a lot of options for adventurers. You have monsters, dinosaurs, and ancient ruins to explore. So, you don't need big stories about this nation. A lot of things that a nice adventurer can go in, check out, discover, have a good time about it. And maybe the Valash Raj will hire some people on to go check something out over that kingdom over there. So there's some other stuff. Place, adventure, and danger It's incredibly interesting. That'll be it for today. Please check out all my other stuff, whether you're joining me live over on Twitch, where I do a lot of tabletop-related recording, or over on my YouTube side, where all tabletop-related stuff and only tabletop-related stuff is uploaded. Please remember to check that out. You can always join me for recordings like this one, a live plays of TTRPGs. My big one is a Pathfinder 2e game, Fall of Adamswell, Wednesdays at 8. Come and join us for that. Or discussing tabletop, my tabletop discussion show / podcasting thing on Saturdays at 6, where we talk about news of the week and more. I've got social media linked below. You can always check that out for updates on any of my schedule or what's going on. You always just hang out for some gaming over on the Twitch side of it too, if you want to do some me for that and talk about some tabletop or other gaming topics. I'm always up for a big conversation. Please do remember, if you're over on the YouTube side of things though, do the little support things, like subscribing the bell, and hey, let me know about all this. Have you had any adventures in Valash Raj, or would you have some interest in dealing with either kaiju or internal politics, or maybe ancient ruins filled with strange magics and technologies? There's a lot of interesting options there. Let me know what you think. But until the next time, though, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful week. Farewell.